Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and good morning, dear educators and parents. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as we are with Dr. Amber Khan today, the author of the Health and Wellness from an Islamic Perspective series and the chairwoman of the Education Committee for the Islamic Medical Association of North America. Thank you so much, Dr. Amber, for being with us today and taking time to share with us some of your teaching tips and expertise in these critical subjects. Please go ahead. The mic is all yours. Jazakumullah kul khair.
Alhamdulillah wa salala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good morning, good early afternoon. I hope everyone is doing well. Firstly, on behalf of myself, I would like to thank the Noor Art team for organizing today's webinar. As you can see, the discussion is on puberty and discussing puberty from a parent and from an educator and for anyone who is a community member or who works with youth in your local masjid or Islamic institutions. This is for you, inshallah. And as Brother Sharif mentioned, I have written a health book series. I am the author of Health and Wellness from the Islamic Perspective. This is a book series that aims to answer Muslim youth's most common health questions from an Islamic framework, inshallah. Now, the main focus of today, which is on puberty, it all comes essentially from Level Book 2. Level Book 2 is the book within the book series that includes 3 chapters. Chapter 1 being on puberty, Chapter 2 on reproduction and menstruation, and Chapter 3, which is on hygiene. So all of the information that we're going to be talking about today is just a brief overview of everything that is, inshallah, included within Level Book 2. Now, the first thing that I really want to focus on in today's webinar, we're going to spend a little bit of time on this, is really kind of establishing the why. Why is this important for us as parents, as educators, as community members within our Islamic institutions? Why is this an essential part of tarbiyah, which is something in which we need to include this topic within the curriculum of our schools and within our masjid? So why is this an important aspect? There are many benefits that an adult or an educator or a parent can have when it comes to talking about the discussion of puberty, especially from a parent's perspective. It can lead to a deepening of the parent's relationship with their children, and it really allows them a space which is quite sacred between a parent and a child. And in the same way as in a school setting, it of course can provide our children with a stronger decision-making skills and provide them with information that can talk about some of the risks and dangers of not taking care of one's health, and particularly when one hits puberty. The big focus is, as a parent, as an educator, is asking yourself, why? Why should I be making this a priority in the upbringing of my child or within the tarbiyah of my Islamic school or even weekend school or homeschooling cohort? When you know your why you want to teach this, it can, inshallah, motivate you to learn about puberty yourself, understand how to teach it, the areas that are important specifically for males and for females. Also is knowing your why in terms of how you can help them overcome any discomfort or awkwardness that you may have, including maybe your own cultural or personal upbringing, for the benefit of empowering your child with knowledge about their bodies and their self. For many individuals, they may come from a background in which, well, I never had these discussions growing up. My parents didn't talk to us about this. Our masjid definitely did not. Our schools did not. And when you think about that time in your life and how much easier or better or more assured you may have been if you had a trusted adult have discussions, someone that you could go to ask questions, how much, inshallah, easier that whole process would have been for you, that you can be that for the children in your community. Also, knowing your why can help grant you the urgency to address this topic sooner than later. A lot of the times, parents or schools tend to hold off on this discussion until children are really well into puberty, or for some cases, they're almost at the end of puberty. Having these discussions early on, being proactive as a community, can help prepare our children before they are in it, and especially while they are in it. So let's look at a couple of specifics of the whys. Why teach our children about puberty? Number one, is when you teach your children about puberty, especially when they are young, talking around the age of 10 or 11, before they're really hitting puberty, is that they're more likely to listen. During the lower elementary or early middle school years, youth are much more willing to listen. They value the adults and the elderly in their life. They look up to them. They view them as role models, someone they can come to and trust. And so, alhamdulillah, the environment in terms of them actually sitting and listening and paying attention and wanting to hear what you have to say is already natural within them. And so now you get to establish a whole new area in your relationship. You can kind of take advantage of the fact that they are young and willing to listen to you, and you can talk about things that will be beneficial to them. It also kind of sets the tone that as you get older, since I've already kind of set this new environment, this change in our relationship, that we can have these discussions, that as you get older, that you can come to me, that you can ask me questions. As you get older, you've already kind of set the tone. As they get into their early teen years, they may be more likely then to turn to you to ask you questions. They may view you as less closed off, that you've kind of opened the door, you've taken away the awkwardness. And even though they may be awkward when they have these discussions, if you have proactively initiated the conversation, then at least they know that they can come to you. If you don't, they may feel like they can't turn to you, or that you've kind of indirectly made it clear to them that these are not topics that you want to talk about, especially if you have not initiated them. In a health class that I teach, and these are 16, 17-year-old students, there are about 40 students in the class, and only two of the entire 40 students said that they have received sex education from their home, from their parents. Many of them said, I mostly get my information from videos or lectures or from my peers. And so we see that sometimes when parents don't initiate the conversation, it gives children that impression that these are not topics we can have with our parents. So this is one way in which we can address that why, is that they will listen. This also does align with research as well. This is a study that was done by Dr. Sobia Ali Faisal in 2016, and she found from the Muslims that participated in this survey that young Muslim adults in her survey reported that their greatest source of sex education is from the media, and that their least likely source is from their parents. So this is something in which we need to empower our parents, and we need to be much more proactive when it comes to teaching them about puberty and opening that door of conversation. Furthermore, is that it also helps to transfer some values that underpin healthy decision making from an Islamic framework. Studies have found that children who receive early education from trusted adults are much more likely to engage in risky behaviors as well, because you're already empowering them in that knowledge. And that kind of leans to why number two, is that inshallah, this type of knowledge can protect them. It can protect them from all forms of abuse. Now, sexual abuse is something that is very real in our community. It's this open secret. It's that it happens, but a lot of people don't talk about it or don't report it. So talking to our youth, our kids, the parents, the community, the school system, talking to our kids about their bodies, teaching them the names of their body parts, talking to them about body boundaries, even with mahram, right? Even that you're with mahram and it's someone you can be alone with it. If you feel a sense of lack of safety or discomfort, then you can talk to me about it. Now, our faith very much talks about body boundaries. In age 7, we all tend to be aware of the fact that this is the age in which we are to teach our children how to pray. But also within this age range is when parents also need to teach their children about there are certain times of the day in which you need to knock and seek permission before entering. As Allah mentions in Surah 24, verse 58, that within this verse is that before the morning prayer, that when you take your clothes off at noon and after the night prayer, that these are the times in which for children who have not yet reached puberty, they need to ask permission before entering. In other words, it's teaching the child that you can't just barge in, that people may be changing their clothes or maybe sleeping, and so you need to ask permission. This also gives the children the impression that they too need that privacy as well. That when they're using the bathroom, when they're changing their clothes, that people need to seek permission before just barging in, that it's inappropriate, that it is a violation of their privacy for someone to watch them change or to kind of come in that area. And then if this is something that's inappropriate, according to our tradition, then what about more so when there is touching or there is viewing that is completely that is much more explicit than this? And then we move on to age 7. Age 7 is when children at all times of the day need to ask permission before entering someone's private room. Furthermore, is when your children attain puberty, let them ask leave to come to you like their elders used to ask. So this is again signifying that as the child gets older, now they need to ask permission at all times. When you're younger at age 7, there may be times of the day where you can go into your parents' room without asking. But by the time you hit age 10, this is something in which you need to do at all times. And this also gives the message to the children that others need to do this for you as well, that people cannot just come in on your personal space. Furthermore, is there a hadith that mentions about the importance of separating children from whether it's adults or other siblings in terms of bedding, that they are to have their own separate pillow or separate blanket. When we look at the global world, a lot of children do sleep in the same room as their siblings, or they sleep in the same room as their parents. And so this is very normal, but it's important that they have their own little space that they can have, a privacy to, and that people aren't, very close to each other in the bedding. Again, this is an insinuation of the protection of any form of abuse. Alhamdulillah, Islam, it's the only faith that talks about child sexual abuse protection. And we do not take advantage of this enough, and we do not acknowledge this enough. So we want to utilize this information, instruct our children, give them the language to express their boundaries, let them know that they have a right to have privacy, even with those in their own home, even with those who are mahram. This knowledge, inshallah, it can help them even report unhealthy behavior and material. These two skills, they will not only be critical for them as children, but they also will help signify, even when they do get married and in terms of intimate relationships, importance of body boundaries. So this is another very important why, the protection. Number 3 is that when you teach your children about puberty, it gives them confidence. Every child that experiences puberty goes through, a period of discomfort. Puberty is often scary. It's uncomfortable. For some individuals, it's really exciting. They develop a lot of curiosity. But for many youth, they find this time in their life extremely difficult, especially when it comes to the emotional and social changes that come with the physical changes of puberty. And they really are in need of a lot of support from their parents, as well as their school and even their community. Research has confirmed that those who have received education about their changing bodies from a trusted adult, they're much more likely to face this very unique experience in their life with confidence and adapt well. It gives them someone that they can talk to about what's going on with them. It also enables kids to be heard and accepted and supported. A trusted adult who does this consistently is really the distinguishing factor. A lot of the times when we talk about talking to our kids about puberty, we may feel, oh, this is just maybe a one-time conversation, or maybe I don't want to have it, but maybe I won't give this talk to my child, but their school offers a health seminar once a year. But this shows that really puberty is a journey. It's a continuous check-in. It's not a one-time conversation. And it's not something especially us as parents, we can just put completely in the responsibility of the school or in a halakha. This is something in which parents really need to be actively involved in. You are the ones that are going to see your child the most and watch them go through this journey. So having a discussion every few months, you're kind of building off of the last thing you talked about, and it gives the child a new opportunity for them to seek help and guidance and maybe talk about things that they are going through as they move through the stage of puberty. The fourth why is why teach our children about puberty is because it helps to fuel their curiosity. Youth have a lot of curiosity around their changing bodies. SubhanAllah, it's interesting because whenever I give a puberty talk at a school or at a halakha, the children are really quiet. It's to them, maybe they're very shy about the topic. But once we get going and we start talking, then they start coming with so many questions. There's so many questions that they have, and they finally feel like, oh, I finally have this outlet to start asking the things that I've been so curious about. And it's also really wonderful to watch children asking questions and other kids in the room who still remain quite quiet, but they're benefiting from those questions. And I'm sure that if one kid asks a question, they all probably have the same question. So there's so much curiosity around puberty, their changing bodies, around sexual feelings, their peer relationships, gender interactions. So when you initiate this conversation, it fuels youth to look for answers from you. The truth is that when children have these types of questions, it's not that they just kind of go away. It's that they're going to look for somewhere to get these questions addressed. And if you don't provide, if you don't open yourself up as somebody who they can come to, they're more likely to turn to their peers or turn to the internet. In other words, unsafe and unreliable resources. Without trusted adults initiating these conversations and providing them a space to ask questions, essentially it's giving youth no alternative except to seek out unreliable information. So you are to be that reliable source. You are to be that safe go-to person that they can ask questions and learn, especially because you can provide that information within an Islamic framework. And some youth, they really only have secular sources to learn from, which kind of moves into the next why, which is why teach youth about puberty is that it helps to combat a lot of the messaging that they are receiving online, whether it's on YouTube or it's on other social media platforms, or especially even from their peers. Our youth are exposed to more and more sexual content and riskier behavior, even at younger ages, whether it's the images that they view online that negatively influence their body image and their sense of self, to influences of sexuality, premarital relations, drug use, even atheism, even disregarding religion altogether. And we are very much seeing this within Muslim youth. I hope that this slide is clear for you. If not, please be aware that all of the graphics that are here, they are also included within the book series. But this is an infographic that was created by the Family and Youth Institute. You'll also see it on their resources. And I am a community educator for the Family and Youth Institute. And they did a research study with Young Muslim Organization. And they asked Muslim youth about their viewing of pornography. And within the Muslims that surveyed, it's reported, and they were around between the ages of 16 and 22, that of those Muslims who surveyed, that 59% said that they do view pornography. 75% of the young men surveyed that they view pornography, and 31% of the females. And when it was asked how often they view it, 16% daily, 41% multiple times a week, 43% a few times a month. And subhanAllah, what was also interesting about this study is that they did view themselves as religious, and they also viewed watching pornography as haram, that it's morally prohibited. But despite those things, it was something that they still struggled with. Now the number, and I know a lot of these numbers are quite alarming, but the one that I really want to point out is the one that says the 79%. That 79% of them said that they don't feel like they have family to talk to, that they don't feel like they have anyone to turn to for help, that it was something that they didn't want to do or that they wanted to stop, but they were really struggling with who they could talk to and ask. And this is something in which when our community doesn't open ourselves up and create these proactive conversations, that our youth often feel very stuck. Another study done by the Family and Youth Institute reported the tobacco and hookah use amongst Muslim college students, that 44% within the study said that they have smoked hookah, 51% about tobacco use, that there tends to be this big focus in our community on the prohibition of alcohol. And alhamdulillah, that is extremely important because alcohol is a big part of our culture, American culture, Western society, societal culture, especially when youth go into college. But then by having this big focus on alcohol and that being the only focus when we talk about substance use, is that it tends to kind of belittle or, kind of undermine the rulings that come with other forms of substances, even when it comes to the dangers of vaping and tobacco and hookah use. This is an image of how LGBTQ narrative is taught in secular school programming. This is something in which that we are seeing on the rise in the United States, that LGBTQ inclusive programming is becoming much more mandated. And so youth who do go to public school, they are hearing that narrative. And so our communities, our masjids, our Islamic schools, weekend schools, and of course at home, is that we need to have conversations about what is sexual and gender identity from an Islamic perspective, right? How does Islam view these things differently? Talking about the story of Lut alayhi salam, talking about the difference between support and tolerance, how to navigate living in a pro-LGBTQ society as a Muslim. And all of that information is found in Level Book 5, where there are 2 chapters on those discussions of genderism and same-sex attraction within that level. And another study that I wanted to share is the rise in the lack of religiosity in Muslim youth as they reach adulthood. This is a Pew Research study, and it found that 1 in 4 Americans who are raised as Muslim They report no longer identifying with Islam by the time they reach adulthood, either leaning towards atheism or no religion. Now, of course, this is a much bigger discussion of health, but a main distinction here is that health has a lot of Islamic components, including spiritual health as well as mental health. And so being able to address certain issues that our youth are dealing with, inshallah, can help to nurture their spiritual self, especially when it comes to certain aspects of health that tend to be very different from the secular, such as sexual and gender identity, such as dealing with premarital relations, such as dealing with mental health issues. Now, our job as parents, as educators, and members of our community is with all of the media that our youth are being exposed to, especially as they get older, is that we really need to provide our youth with tools that they need to help them understand what this messaging means and everything that is kind of coming at them online. This will help them to think critically and become media literate, understand media, and ask questions in order to correct any misinformation, right? That just because you see something online, it doesn't mean that it's true, or just because you see something being promoted online, it doesn't mean that there aren't consequences. Also is to kind of give them a framework that some aspects of secular culture, they don't align with Islam. And what is this Islamic wisdom behind why certain things are impermissible that they're often seeing online? And finally, and of course there's many whys, but these are the ones that I wanted to focus on within our time together, is the final why is that when you talk to your youth about puberty, it helps to simply build this platform of trust between you as a parent and them as your child. Research indicates that the greatest factor in children's well-being and mental health is that they can establish a relationship with a trusted adult. Conversations around puberty, they're much deeper than the actual discussions. It means that I care about you, that this awkwardness or the sensitivity to this topic, this is something in which, despite that it may be uncomfortable for both of us, this is important. This is important for you as you're growing up. I want you to be prepared as you are getting older, and that this space that we have together is sacred. As a parent and a child, these are things that we can and we should talk about. And I want you to know that as you get older, you can always come to me for questions that you may have, no matter how awkward or uncomfortable they make you or they'll make me as a parent, that we need to create that type of sacred environment. It serves, inshallah, as this window for other important future questions that you know your children are probably going to have as they get older. Oftentimes, parents tend to push this responsibility on an Islamic school and a weekend school or a youth halaqah. And those areas are important. It's important and it's vital for our schools to teach this. But from a parent perspective, they also need to be a part of the conversation. They need to be continuing that conversation at home as well. And youth, they really need their parents to have these conversations too. So it needs to be more of this collaborative effort between the school and the parents, building this level of trust, not just at home, but also our children knowing that their teachers can be a form of trust, a trusted adult that they can go to, especially if they feel a lack of safety in other areas of their life. Now, in addition to the why is it important to teach our youth about puberty, is also understanding what happens when we don't. What are some potential consequences? How is their upbringing going to be affected if we don't talk to them about their body and about their health? This is found in the introduction section of every single level book series because it's important to review for both the teacher and the child, as well as the parents for those who are utilizing the book series and teaching it at home. And I encourage you to use this resource to start this conversation. A lot of parents, they feel, okay, I want to talk to my kids about puberty. I just have no idea how to do it. I was never taught about puberty when I was a kid. I don't have any resources, and the ones that are really available and out there tend to be secular based, and they don't always align with Islamic tradition. And so this was really what fueled the purpose of this book series, was so that you as a parent could take this book series, and even the child, the book is written to the child. It's not written to the parent. It's written to the child so that you can read it together and you can build and have discussions off of that material. Well, one of the first things that you'll notice in the book series is the introduction section, and it talks about some of the consequences. And it goes into detail, but I'll just briefly mention them here, is that one may be putting themselves at risk of poor health. They may practice improper hygiene or hygiene practices that may fall out of the Islamic teachings. They may be more likely to seek out unreliable resources. If you don't open yourself up as a parent or a teacher or a community halakha leader, or you may be using unreliable resources, then it leans the child to also do that as well, relying on the internet, social media, their own peers. One may be more easily believing incorrect information that's passed around, such as certain types of cultural beliefs and practices as well. SubhanAllah, it's interesting because there's also a lot of parents that will come to me and they'll say, well, there are a lot of things that I thought were, from Islamic tradition, but through reading the book series, I realized that a lot of that was from my cultural background. And I always had issues with those things. And now I get to see and realize that that wasn't Islam at all, and that Islam actually doesn't align with certain types of practices that came from culture. So it also helps us as adults, especially for many of us who didn't have these puberty talks, is that we get this opportunity to kind of go through it again in our adulthood. Another consequence is being more likely to engage in risky behavior. If we don't talk to our youth about the dangers of premarital relations, for example, such as the mental risk, the social risk, the spiritual risk, not just the physical, but there's so many other components that they may be more likely to engage in risky behaviors. Same when it comes to drug use. And puberty, that talk of puberty, it's building into all of these discussions. The puberty talk is really what kind of leads to all of those other big conversations. Misunderstanding consent and body boundaries. And finally is the suffering in silence, whether it's dealing with abuse, whether it's improper hygiene or unsafe health practices, or not dealing with the consequences of risky behavior. These are some of the intense and major consequences when we don't take the time to talk to our youth about health. Now, the purpose of this, it was not meant to scare you or to, cause any alarm, but the purpose of it is really to show how vital and how important it is for us as parents, as teachers and community members to really take that initiative and have these conversations. A lot of the time health is looked at as, kind of this optional course, or it's looked at as, there's so many other things that I need to focus on with my child, but especially as they are going through those middle school years, this is really the most important thing that's going on in their life, which is the puberty changes. And so we need to make that a priority when it comes to teaching them about health. Now, I would like to move on to the actual puberty discussion. But before I do that, as we move away from the importance, does anyone have any questions or comments before we get into the discussion of how do we actually have the conversation of puberty?
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Amber. We do have Sister Wala here raising her hand. If you may, I will allow her to speak and she can have the mic, inshallah. 1 second. Sister Wala, would you like to speak? Okay. If anybody of any of the teachers or parents, okay, Sister Tasneem. 1 second here. Okay. I would like to ask the technical team to allow Sister Tasneem to speak, please. Sister Tasneem, please unmute your microphone so you can speak.
Oh, now I say Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Khan, for the webinar. I just want to thank you first before I start my question. I know it's a matter of time. Actually, I work at one of the Sunday school as education coordinator. I have a quick question. Whatever you talk about is amazing, actually. That's exactly what we're looking for our middle school and high school. So the curriculum you have for health and wellness, do you think this curriculum itself can be enough for the whole like the whole Sunday school, weekend school by itself, that it cover all the content, or something have to ask, or it's supposed to be additional to another curriculum?
Jazakallah khair, Sister Tasneem, for your comments and for your question. So the book series was written to be a comprehensive health curriculum. So it's meant to cover an array of topics that are often covered in a regular secularized health curriculum. I used to teach health class using the public school curriculum. So just keeping in mind with what all of those topics are, I mean, that's a class that is taught throughout the entire school year. They meet like once, sometimes twice a week. So it's a very comprehensive health class. It's medically accurate, it's age appropriate. And so this was to mimic that. It was to mimic that type of health curriculum from an Islamic framework. So it is extremely comprehensive. At the same time, I always feel like it's beneficial to utilize other resources if you find that they will be beneficial, supplement the material, especially as you move forward towards teaching your students and you realize, wow, they have a lot of questions on a particular topic. Then the teacher's manual includes additional resources, secular-based, Islamic-based. Sometimes there's some YouTube videos, or there's documentaries, or there's book series, or articles, or podcasts, or activities that are included to kind of allow the teacher or the educator or the parent to delve into a topic in much more detail. For example, there's students of mine who they had a ton of questions, and I wasn't expecting it, a ton of questions when it came to a particular type of drug. And it was something that was pretty common within their own community, within their like the greater urbanized community that they lived in. And so we were able to utilize a lot of different resources from the teacher's manual to kind of allow them the space to understand that material. So inshallah, it's meant to be quite comprehensive, but I do encourage you to look at resources. And if you do utilize them, just make sure from a teacher standpoint that you, as I'm sure you would do, is to verify and make sure that they are age appropriate and the content is with that aligns, inshallah, with our morality, and utilize other things as well within the curriculum that you're using here with the health book, inshallah.
Thank you so much.
Any last questions or comments? Okay, inshallah, we'll go ahead and move forward. And as we move through this session today, if you have any questions, please feel free to let Brother Sharaf know, and we'll pause every now and then to take those questions. So let's kind of get into the discussion of puberty. Puberty is essentially this transformation from a child into an adult. It can take several years, feel very out of control and scary, but for some youth, they really do also find it exciting too. So a lot of different emotions. As many are aware, the time of puberty usually often girls or females experience puberty earlier. Girls may experience puberty as young as 9 years old. So that's talking about 4th grade. And for some females, they don't experience puberty until 14. And it's important that females understand that both are completely normal. A lot of the time it's based off genetics. But we also see how important it is to really start the discussion off soon, around 4th grade or 5th grade at the very least. And even if one's child isn't going through it, it's important to prepare them ahead of time. And also, if they are someone who may not experience the symptoms of puberty or the transformation of puberty until later on, maybe closer to their high school, there are so many youth who are going through it. And so it's important for them to kind of understand what's happening and what's going on. Males, on the other hand, they tend to start puberty closer to around ages 11 until like around 15, meaning some can start as early as 11, others around 15. So there's this big transformation, and it takes several years. And so it's a big part of their life from middle school and even through high school as well. So it's something that lasts for quite a long time. When it comes to what puberty actually is, a lot of the time we tend to focus on just the physical changes, and those are important. And they are, of course, the most explicit and apparent changes. But the ones that tend to have the biggest effect on our youth are the mental, and for our youth in particular, the spiritual components that come as well with puberty. So let's take this in step, and let's go ahead and first discuss the physical changes of puberty. The physical changes of puberty can be broken down into 2 main physical changes. The first one are the secondary sex characteristics, and the second is fertility. So let's look at the secondary sex characteristics first. Now, I understand this chart may be small. The purpose of me putting it on the slide here was for you to see that that this is something that is available in the book series. It's in that level 2 book. But in this chart here, it goes through all of the secondary sex characteristics that a male as well as a female will go through. What you'll also notice about the book series is that I don't have a puberty book for just the boys, and I don't have one for girls. I have put both within the same level book. Now, if that's something that people would be interested in having one for just one gender or for the other, that could be something that we could work towards in the future. But the purpose of me making it include both is because it's important for both to understand what's going on with the other. So we want to have that knowledge base, right? The discussions can be separated and should be separated. I encourage and I recommend that in the teacher's manual, that we have a same gendered environment learning and inshallah a same gender teacher teaching that material. But when I talk to the girls about puberty, I also discuss what's going on with the males, and vice versa is something that I'd recommend for the males as well. Now, what are secondary sex characteristics? The secondary sex characteristics are essentially all of those physical changes that we think about when one goes through puberty. So let's go through some of these. As you'll notice, the secondary sex characteristics are broken up into different stages called Tanner stages, and there's 5 of them. So if we look at the boy, a young boy to a man transformation, these are the 5 stages that he will go through and what happens in each stage. So generally speaking, around age 10 is that the brain is going to release hormones to his reproductive organs to start the beginnings of puberty. They may not notice any changes yet, but we may see some mental changes there too. Stage 2 is when they start seeing growth in their reproductive organs, and they might start to see body hair, including pubic hair. Stage 3 is when reproductive organs are continuing to enlarge, their voice will start changing, they'll start developing more muscles, and they'll start getting taller, about 2 to 3 inches of growth per year, again, based on genetics too. Stage 4, around age 14, so kind of moving into high school. Again, generally speaking, on the ages is important. We reassure our youth of that as well, because some youth, they don't start stage 1 until 14. So this is very generally speaking. Stage 4 is that continued growth of the reproductive organs, a continued growth of body hair, including armpit hair now. And this is really where we start to see a lot of the changes in the depth of the voice of a male. And finally, stage 5, which is kind of the ending point of puberty. This is where the reproductive organs have reached the size that they're going to be for their adult body. Their last set of body hair, which is the facial hair, it often tends to be the last part for some males, or kind of the last one to be complete, as well as height. So these are the physical changes that a male will go through in puberty. Now, if we move over to the right side of the chart, we'll look at the girl to woman transformation. Now, right off the bat, we're seeing that the age is different. She's starting earlier from the males, as we spoke about. In stage 1, this is the same as the male, in which the brain is going to start releasing hormones to the reproductive organs to initiate puberty. Stage 2 is when they'll start having breast development as well as body hair growth, including pubic hair. Stage 3 is the continuation of those, along with hips and thigh buildup in fat, and also an increase in height, about 3 inches per year. This is also why we see that most girls tend to be taller than boys in middle school. It's nice for the boys to feel that level of reassurance as well, that girls go through puberty first, so that's why they are a little bit more ahead of the changes. Stage 4, this is the phase this is the stage in which most females will have their first period. Now, some may have it earlier than that in the previous stages, but generally speaking, this is when a girl will have her first period. And finally, in stage 5 is where she will continue to have the development in all of those changes. Breast development, her reproductive organs are changing in size, her height is growing, and now at this point, her height is increasing. And also when it comes to her period, that it should be starting to regulate. She should start having a period every single month. She should be able to predict when it's coming and for how long it lasts. And that signifies the end of puberty for the female. So these are the general changes that the male and the female may go through. And what you'll notice in stage 1 is what initiates these changes is the release of hormones. hormones are going to be extremely high within this particular stage of their life. And the purpose of the the amount of hormones that are running through their body is, of course, for these changes to occur. But there are side effects to that as well. One of the first major side effects is when you have so much hormones running through your body that it will lead to excessive oil on the face, the chest, the back, or other body parts. And this is also why, and this is the reason for why youth in this time period will deal with acne. Acne is a formation of pustules that are due to oil that becomes clogged with oil and dirt. So you have these oil glands in the body, and they're getting more oil because of the hormones releasing so much excessive oil. And in combination with any dirt that may be around as well, they'll develop acne. Now, acne, it usually appears as red, swollen pustules known as pimples or zits. They could be flesh colored like whiteheads, or they could be black, which are known as blackheads. But research shows that a lot of the time your acne is due not just to the hormonal surge of puberty, but also due to genetics. So we just want to reassure our youth that this is very common. This is normal. A lot of the time they'll wonder, why do I have all this acne? Well, this is just a part of puberty. You have a lot of hormones. Eventually it will calm down. It won't always be like this, but for a couple of years you may be dealing with acne. But there's also things you can do to help you with your acne. Washing your face with a mild soap to unclog pores. Popping, squeezing your pimples really makes it worse. So try to avoid doing it. It also may be more likely to lead to scarring. So trying to discourage them from doing that, trying over-the-counter acne creams that contain benzoyl peroxide or salicylic acid can also help. And of course, if you feel like your acne is persisting, it's getting worse, these over-the-counters are not working, talk to your doctor. There's a lot of prescriptions that are available that can help with acne as well. Now, while acne is a normal part of puberty, it can lead to a lot of feelings of self-consciousness and anxiety and feelings of poor body image. So we definitely want to check in on our youth that may be dealing with some types of feelings in that regard. Talking to your parents, talking to a dermatologist can help you find, safe and effective ways of dealing with acne. So we don't want them to feel like they're alone or they're stuck or there's no solution. Another major side effect of the hormonal surge in puberty is body odor. Now, body odor is something that does stay with a person their entire adult life. However, particularly in the time period of puberty, it can be very intense. It will eventually subside, but while again, one is dealing with body odor while they're going through puberty, is to talk to them about the importance of wearing deodorant. That deodorant helps to take away the smell, and an antiperspirant helps to decrease or minimize the amount of sweating. Also, are wearing cotton, washing with a hypoallergenic soap. These are all types, and these are all ways in which one can minimize the amount of odor. Switching also, as I mentioned, from synthetic fabrics to cotton as well can also reduce the amount of sweat. Now, the other aspect of puberty, aside from, as we mentioned, the many changes and the side effects, as we spoke about, is now getting into the Islamic principle of when you start going through these changes, now you really need to start developing a hygiene regimen. You need to start wearing deodorant. You need to be more mindful of, the way that you smell, of taking care of your skin, but also you need to also start taking care of the body hair. According to the following hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ said, this is in Bukhari, that there are 5 things that are a part of the fitrah, or the awareness of Allah. And that is that once one starts developing pubic hair, coarse pubic hair, of course, it can be very fine in the beginning, and we don't want them to get too anxious about, I need to start taking care of this. But once it starts getting coarse, is that they need to start as it mentions in this hadith, shaving the pubic hair. But how we deal with the hair, as many of the scholars have mentioned, is quite general. So typically just trimming the hair would be sufficient, using a trimmer or using a scissor. That shaving the hair, especially because it's so coarse, can lead to ingrown hairs. So trimming that hair, circumcision, which males would have had in the beginning of their life after birth, trimming the mustache so it doesn't go onto the mouth or onto the lips. Plucking the armpit hair, again, plucking is, we can use it more broadly here and say trimming even the armpit hair if one wants to shave, but being mindful of ingrown hairs, and cutting the nails. So we want to choose options when it comes to keeping this hair short or trimming it. We want it to be safe for their skin. So, trying to trim it to avoid ingrown hairs or any infection. And how often youth are to do this and we are to teach them is that one cannot leave it for more than 40 nights. So about once a month. About once a month within your hygiene regimen, you should have a morning routine, a night routine when it comes to brushing your teeth, washing your face, putting on deodorant, same within the evening. But then once a month is making sure you go through your hair maintenance as well as your nail care maintenance as well. Now, everybody's different. And so for some individuals who their hair growth may be more rapid, as well as their nails, then they should do it more often. Now, a lot of the times youth will also add that or follow up with, well, what about other hair? Can I remove other hair from my body? That yes, you are allowed to remove other hair. Talk to your parents about it and see what's safe and right for you, especially removing leg hair or body hair. When it comes, however, to eyebrows, this is something which is prohibited. And so the hair that's in between the eyebrows is okay to remove, but the actual eyebrow hairs is prohibited. So this is kind of a brief overview of dealing with the secondary sex characteristics. In more detail, more information is included in the book series, but these are the things that I wanted to focus on here. Now, the other aspect of the physical changes is number one was secondary sex characteristics, and number two was fertility. Fertility, of course, means, and it's important to define this for our youth because for many of them, they may not be aware. Fertility means that now your body is able to have a baby one day. You're able to reproduce one day. When one is a child or prepubescent, before going through puberty, their body is not capable of that. But once one starts going through puberty, their body is. Now, for a female is asking, well, if my body is fertile, how do I know? Is there a sign? How do I know that my body is now fertile? And for females, as well as for males, it's important to really start off with talking to them about their reproductive anatomy, going through the names of their body parts, of their reproductive organs, what it looks like, how they function, and then really kind of explaining that in the male reproductive organs, that the function and the purpose of them is sperm production, that once a male hits puberty, his body is now able to produce sperm. And sperm is located in the testicles. A sign that one knows that they have now the development of sperm, aside from the secondary sex characteristics, but a sign literally of fertility for males, is that they see sperm production, is that they may have what's known as a nocturnal emission or a wet dream, or in other words, ejaculation, and that's the release of sperm from the body. This is something that a prepubescent body would not be able to do. So when males see that, that is a physical sign that they're fertile, that they're now producing sperm and able to have a baby one day. Similarly is for the females as well, talking to them about their female reproductive organs, the names, how they function, their purpose. All of the detail of this is in the book series. It goes through a lot of detail on the names of these parts. But for the female body is that their bodies are producing, that their bodies are now releasing eggs from their ovary, that females are actually born with eggs, but it's not until puberty where the egg is able to leave the ovary, enter the fallopian tube, wait for sperm. If sperm enters the body, then they would be fertile, then the egg would be fertilized and be able to make a baby one day. How does a female know that her body is now releasing eggs? Would of course be that she is having a period. That a period or going through a menstruation is a sign that her body is producing an egg, and as well as a lining that would be around her uterus. So these are the physical signs that let the youth know that their body is fertile. Fertility and our children and our youth knowing about fertility, it's a sign not just of fertility, but it's a sign that you are now becoming mentally, emotionally, and spiritually responsible for controlling the feelings that will come from your body becoming fertile. And that, of course, is the feelings of sexual desire. Fertility and the signs of fertility also go hand in hand with the fact that you will want to, or your body will at least want to engage in the acts that will enable one to become fertile or be able to produce a child one day. And so now you become responsible with knowing what those feelings are and how to navigate them. But this is a beautiful depiction of, when a sperm and an egg do come together, that the female body is able to become pregnant. And it's also important for our youth to understand that this is possible only with the coming together of a sperm and an egg. that two males cannot make a baby or two females cannot make a baby, that this is only possible scientifically, biologically, and of course, Islamically. This is only possible by a sperm which comes from the male and an egg which comes from the female coming together and fertilizing with the development, which leads to the development of a baby. Now, as I mentioned before, that this ability to become fertile by the will of Allah, it means that one's mind, mental changes, in other words, are going to start really kicking in here. And this is where we can really start talking about the mental changes of puberty. There are a lot of mental changes of puberty, and of course, we could not discuss all of them today. There's a lot of feelings of insecurity. There's a lot of changes in peer relationships, a lot of influences. And this has really covered a big bulk of the book series outside of level 2, talk about these mental changes. Level 3 talks about self-esteem and dealing with entertainment such as social media and video game usage. Level 4 as well as level 5. These all are discussing the mental changes of puberty because there's so many components. But the ones that I really wanted to focus on today was the aspect of sexual desire. Now, when one's body is going through puberty and they're, of course, becoming fertile, is that they're going to start developing the feeling of sexual desire. A child does not have feelings of sexual desire, right? Because it aligns with fertility. But once you start having these types of feelings, then it's important for you to understand that these are natural and normal feelings. They're a normal part of your biological makeup. There's nothing to feel ashamed or embarrassed of. We definitely want to have these discussions that talk about having a sense of comfort in these natural feelings, that Allah created these feelings. We don't want them to have these feelings of sexual guilt that can impact them down the line, in a future way. And sometimes we may have these discussions to, make them feel sex is bad and having sexual desire is bad, as a way to deter them from premarital relations. But then it can also backfire and give them a lot of intense feelings of sexual guilt and make them even potentially lead to having issues with intimacy as they do get married, when acting on these feelings is completely halal, permissible, and even encouraged. So these are normal, natural, and expected feelings. That being said, even though you have these feelings, acting on these feelings, it only goes within certain boundaries of marriage between a man and a woman. And until you are ready to actually start engaging in that act within those boundaries, you have to learn how to take responsibility for these feelings. You have to learn to control them, in terms of gender interactions, in terms of, how when you see somebody that you like or there's something that you're seeing online, how do you get yourself to control and take control of these feelings? And this really leads to the discussion of opposite gender interactions. That now as you're going through puberty, that now your interaction with the opposite gender, it still can occur, but it's limited at this point, right? There's certain types of conditions and boundaries around it. That when you do interact with an opposite gender, perhaps on a school project or what have you, that the purpose of that interaction is supposed to be purposeful, that there has to be a reason to that interaction. The second is that it can never be alone. It should always be in the presence of others. And it's really important that we highlight that even in the digital world, that even when you're online or you're on a phone, such as text messaging, or maybe it's email, that these should not be and are not private conversations. And this is really where we highlight for parents the importance of monitoring your child's social media use, monitoring their cell phone, and letting your child be very blunt with them and let them know that I will be going through your phone. And it's not because it's an invasion of privacy, but it's out of love and respect and care for you. So creating those types of understanding of, we're putting parental controls on your phone and, we're going to be monitoring your usage. And if there's anything you're doing that's inappropriate, we're going to address it and perhaps consequences will result from it, including taking away of the phone. So it's important that parents stay on top of that. And then number 3 is keeping to your own personal space, meaning when it comes to, how close you stand or touching, or whether it's even including aspects of modesty, such as outer modesty as well, that they're in lowering the gaze. These are all aspects that will go along now with opposite gender interaction. There are some examples. The Prophet ﷺ, he would designate a specific day and time to sit with the Muslim women and answer questions. This is a beautiful example of when we see the focus on a purpose, that you can still utilize and benefit from each other as a community, but it needs to be done in a manner in which you are in the presence of others and you're keeping to your modesty, your personal space. Another example is Prophet Musa alayhi salam. He approached the two women and they were not his mahram, but he offered them assistance to help them with their animals. Of course, is Safwan, the brother who helped Aisha radiallahu anha when she was left deserted in the desert. So it's important that our youth know that, well, I see an opposite gender, they're in need of help, but I'm not to engage with them but no, there is an allowance. There are certain types of ways you can interact with the opposite gender, right? As long as it is appropriate. So you want to give them that realistic understanding from the seerah and from examples of our prophets of Allah that we see how they would interact with the gender. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned specifically that never is a man alone with a woman except that shaitan is the third party with them. That this is the wisdom behind interacting in the presence of others. That you never know the feelings and the desires that may come up or the things that may be said or done when you are alone with each other. And as we mentioned already about the personal space. There is a whole section in chapter 1 of level 2, which talks about modesty for males as well as modesty for females, and how that is something that changes as you get older, the ruling of hijab and the ruling of dress for both genders. So that is highlighted there. The next is, how do I just simply on my own handle feelings of attraction? So this is where we want our children to feel empowered, to give them a sense of, what can they do on a behavioral level to control very, very strong feelings, especially in this particular time of their life. Number one is the emphasis of lowering the gaze. There's a beautiful story that's narrated by Abdullah ibn Abbas that Al-Fadl was riding behind the Prophet ﷺ, and there was a woman who came to ask the Prophet ﷺ a question. And Al-Fadl, who was a young man, he started to look at her and stare at her. And the Prophet ﷺ, he saw this and he put his hand to the back of Al-Fadl's chin and he moved it away to emphasize that irrespective of how somebody may dress or look, whether it's online or whether it's in person, you are responsible for your eyes. That is your responsibility. You need to find the strength to lower your gaze, to not stare and look at things that are not appropriate for you. So a beautiful example of, regardless of us living in a secularized society and people have the right to dress and act how they want, you are responsible for your eyes. You need to take that level of ownership. And also is a sign of respect and dignity to others as well. Another aspect is fasting. Fasting is something in which, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that, if you're not able to get married and you have this desire, then you should fast. Fasting builds taqwa. Taqwa is essentially, it's much more than God consciousness, as many people will define it, but it's also a shield, that it's to shield you from that which is impermissible. A lot of youth will resonate with that, and they'll know that, well, when I fast, like in Ramadan, I feel like I want to make sure that my fast counts. I want to make sure I'm really mindful of the things that I'm saying or what I'm doing. Maybe I won't listen to music in that month, or I won't watch certain types of content that I used to watch. And so they're very mindful of that. And in the same way, fasting is a shield from even our own sexual desires. So fasting regularly is something which is important to talk to them about, not just in Ramadan, but once a week or twice a week. Monday and Thursday are the 3 white days. Find those times of the year within each month to fast. Choosing good company. A lot of the issues with risky behavior is not because I didn't know what was haram or halal, but it was my social environment. It was my peer pressure. It was that which was around me, and I succumbed to it. So having good company, good friends, those who are morally sound, those who you can trust and rely on, those who will take care of you, as narrated by Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ, saying that a man follows the religion of his friend. So each one of you should consider whom he befriends. This is in Abu Dawood. So friends who try to get you to watch inappropriate videos or call or text people you are attracted to, they're not really looking out for your best interest in mind. So take that ownership of who you choose to be in your inner circle. And then finally, number 4 is making dua. Whenever you're struggling with anything, even if it's sexual desire, for some individuals, if they're really dealing with looking at inappropriate content or or what have you, turn to Allah. That, O turner of hearts, keep my heart firm upon your religion, as the Prophet ﷺ said. This is in At-Tirmidhi, that you can always turn to Allah for help and for guidance. Other things that one can do is saying A'udhu Billah, holding firm to your daily salah, performing tahajjud, getting involved in your community, being active, volunteering, attending youth circles, joining a sports team or a club, working out, trying new things, a hobby, spending time with friends, and of course there is the getting married early. But when we talk about the young age of puberty, is we want them to know that use your time. You are young, enjoy your youth. Spend time in your day doing fun things, learning, being with your community. And when you are busy, these feelings, they tend to be much more downplayed. Other aspects of the mental changes of puberty include, of course, the effect that puberty can have on one's self-esteem. That as a Muslim, just as you are to love good things for other people, you are also to love good things for yourself. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. So it's important that we teach our youth to enjoy who they are as a person. What are things that you like about yourself? Having a sense of confidence of, yeah, I'm really good at soccer, or I really enjoy math, or I enjoy, doing certain types of things or reading certain types of things, that we want them to have a good, solid foundation when it comes to how they feel about themselves. They're much less likely to be negatively influenced by others. One of the most extreme risks of or side effects of low self-esteem is feeling like I need to be somebody that I'm not, that I need to do what other people say in order to fit in, and being more at risk of peer pressure, of despite that I know something is wrong, that for the sake of other people liking me or wanting their approval, that I'm more likely to do it. So those who have low self-esteem are more likely to make poor decision-making skills. And there's this beautiful, beautiful hadith, a metaphorical hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he attributes a good friend to being like a perfume seller. That when you have good friends and good people are around you, that their good qualities become your good qualities, right? They make you a better person. And in opposition is when you have someone who deals with coal all day, right? That they have the remnants of the coal on their hands and on their clothing, and that the more you're around them, that the filth comes on you. That those who do not have the best of decision-making skills, that their bad qualities become your bad qualities. So be extremely picky when it comes to who it is that's in your inner circle. Take time to reflect and think about, are these people that I actually enjoy being around? Do I feel safe and comfortable around them? Or am I around them because I feel like I just want their approval? As Allah mentions that, and the day will come when the wrongdoer will bite on his hand and he will say, oh, would that I had taken a path with the messenger. Woe to me, would that I had never taken so-and-so as a friend. He indeed led me astray from the reminder of the Quran after it had come. That we don't want to get to the point where our social environment impacts us so much that we can't even recognize who we are anymore. And there may come a time in which we truly regret ever meeting them. And may Allah protect us all and our youth as well. Other aspects of mental changes, and of course the book series goes into this in a lot more detail, is body image. How attractive we find ourselves, and it's very natural and normal to feel self-conscious, especially during the times of puberty, because our bodies are changing so much, and sometimes youth feel like they don't even recognize who they are anymore. That we want them to establish a good, strong foundation in how they feel about how they look. And any types of negative outside influence that may impact that we as parents and educators need to teach them, especially when it comes to media literacy and body image. That this is a report that found that Instagram and Snapchat, they are very image-focused social media platforms, that they are the worst for youth's mental health and well-being, that they really negatively impact the way that they feel about how they look. And this is across the board between males and females. It's not just one or the other. So teaching our children about media literacy, knowing how to read media. What is the goal of this influencer, or this platform that I'm choosing to follow or look at, or maybe this YouTube channel that I keep looking at? Sometimes it's not always about how one looks, but it's about one's their activities or their attributes, their qualities in terms of, what it is that they're doing or how much money that they're making. And then ask yourself, who is the target audience of this person? Like, who are they trying to target? Are they just trying to target youth and to get someone to sell something? What kind of message are they trying to send me? And if they're a Muslim, then, is there Islamic evidence behind what they're saying? Just because someone is Muslim and claims to be a Muslim influencer doesn't mean that they have any backing Islamically from the Quran and the Sunnah to support anything that they're saying. And then finally, is after looking at certain types of content or videos, how does it make me feel? Does it make me feel worse about myself? Does it make me feel like I'm not good enough? These are the things that we want our youth to ask, and then turn to the point in which they think this is not someone I should be following, or, this Instagram is something which I feel awful about who I am. I should probably silence it or delete it altogether. There is a wonderful resource that the book series does recommend, and this is something in which you can utilize if you want an additional resource on top of this health curriculum and supplementing it, which is, even creating a book club, which is using this book called Fiqh of Social Media. It talks about being media literate from an Islamic perspective. It does a very good job of talking about a lot of the issues that youth deal with in today's time. So I want to move on before we get ready to close. And actually, before we touch on the spiritual changes, does anyone have any questions on the physical or the mental changes that we've spoken about so far? Any comments on additional things?
Jazakumullah khair, doctor. Please, teachers or parents, if you have any questions or if you'd like to speak with the doctor directly, you can click on raise a hand and we can allow you to speak, inshallah. Dr. Amber, we do have a quick question here, if you don't mind. It's talking about the high schoolers. If this curriculum has not been introduced in the school, and I'm a teacher of 15 to 16 years old, how would you recommend the approach would be? Taking into consideration, most likely they do have a lot of knowledge. It might be incorrect at this stage. Please, your advice. Jazakumullah kul khair.
Jazakallah khair for this question. So actually, I'm in the exact same situation. I teach at an Islamic school and it's for high schoolers. And so they have not adapted the curriculum, earlier than that. And they really didn't do much health education for those particular students. They offered some health seminars here or there. That being said, youth kind of took it upon themselves to learn about it on their own, or perhaps they've attended halakas, or their parents have spoken to them. So what I did for those particular students, and this is something that was my experience, and inshallah you know your community best, but from what I would recommend is that you start from the beginning of the series, and you kind of just pick and choose particular topics that you think would be most beneficial to them. So for example, in level 1, it talks a lot about community engagement and fulfilling rights between Muslims. They knew, alhamdulillah, already a lot about that information. So we just kind of touched on it a little bit. There's a big topic on racism in that chapter, and we did actually end up spending a lot of time on that. They had a lot of questions about racism within our own community and dealing and combating with racism. And then in level 1 is the discussion on healthy living, nutrition, fitness, exercising, lifestyle diseases. And they really wanted to learn so much about that. They had a lot of questions about body image and about, how do we lose weight in a healthy way? And so, starting with level 1, we would have missed all of those discussions. Level 2, which is a lot on puberty, we kind of brushed over that. They were like, we've done a ton of puberty seminars already in middle school. I tested their knowledge a little bit, and alhamdulillah, they knew a lot of that information. Level 3 talks a lot more about social media. Being in high school, they had a lot of questions on social media. They did not seem to have much they didn't have any previous education on media literacy or cell phone etiquette. So we took a lot of time and we talked about, the importance of, when when you're with other people, not to be staring and looking at your phone, give people attention, don't be using it during Jummah. Talking about some of the dangers of social media. We talked about, body image, some of the mental health components and addiction. And so just a kind of brief overview is that we ended up going through all of the levels. Some chapters we didn't touch on as much. We kind of focused, but levels 4, 5, and 6 we really focused on. Levels 4, 5, and 6 are mainly for a little bit more of a mature or older audience. They can still be used in 7th and 8th grade, but they definitely can be used in for high school. And so for levels 1, 2, and 3, we kind of picked a couple of topics based on their interest, but 4, 5, and 6 is what we did, and we went through in depth. So I hope that that helps, inshallah, with you teaching some of the students who are a little bit older to consider looking at all of the 6 series and seeing. Oh, the other thing that I did that I would recommend is to do a pre-survey in the beginning of the year. I listed all of the topics that are included in the book series, and you'll find them in the table of contents. And I simply just asked them, which topics are you most interested in learning about? And so they circled like their top 5. And that's where I found that it looks like they're mostly looking at topics that are found in 4, 5, and 6. That being said, I still took some time to look at 1, 2, 3, just to make sure that they, sometimes it's not just always about what they want to learn, but sometimes it's also about what they need to learn. And if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have discussed a lot of the issues when it comes to racism, for example, or healthy eating. So inshallah, I hope that that's beneficial for you. So let's go ahead and continue up with the spiritual changes, and then inshallah, we'll have a few more minutes for questions. So the last part of puberty, and this is the part that's really unique from an Islamic standpoint. If a child goes to public school or is taking a health curriculum, on a secular level, they'll get the physical changes, they'll get mental changes. They won't get it necessarily from an Islamic component because it's secular based, but they definitely won't get the spiritual changes of puberty. And one of the major aspects of the spiritual changes is that now you become accountable, that now you are held accountable. This is really what signifies when it's a person reaches puberty, is that now they have to take responsibility for their actions. They're no longer in training at this point, right? And as Muslims, this is one of the core issues in Islam, that once you enter this phase of, adolescence and adulthood, your actions are going to be recorded in your book, and they're going to be presented on the Day of Judgment. You will be asked about each and every action you did, whether others know about that action or not, as Allah is the all-knowing. Praying your 5 daily salah, fasting during Ramadan, being responsible for your manners, respecting your parents, lying, gossiping, the things that we do in private. So learning how to hold yourself accountable is important in this phase. And it can feel extremely spiritually overwhelming. So we want our youth to understand that holding yourself accountable, it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time. You are still learning about who you are, your personality traits, your desires, your ability to control your emotions. You're also learning about the world, other people's opinions and emotions and cultures. Talking with your family, they know you best, can help you better understand yourself, and kind of learn how to deal with others in appropriate and safe ways. Also, is for our youth to kind of keep in mind that, well, what if I feel like I just don't know enough about Islam to be held accountable? It's important that we reassure our youth to know that, alhamdulillah, you're not held accountable for anything that you don't know. So if you do something wrong unknowingly, Allah is merciful and won't hold you accountable. That being said, you are responsible for learning and understanding Islam. You cannot intentionally remain ignorant or naive so you're not held accountable, right? You'll be judged on that intention. So you need to take the effort to seek knowledge and to learn. Attending halaqas, being a part of youth groups, reading Islamic books, perhaps taking Islamic classes online or in person. Utilize your community, be a part of your community, and take time to learn and understand. And the final remark that I'll make here is that we also teach our youth and give them the tools to know how to say sorry. It's important that they understand that you are going to make mistakes. You are going to sin. Everybody does. And so part of that accountability is not just knowing that you need to do things in accordance to Islam, but you need to know what you should do if you don't, or when you don't, how to repent to Allah, how to apologize to another person. So giving them those tools and really emphasizing the importance of seeking tawbah, knowing that Allah is all forgiving, that there's nothing that you can do that won't enable you to be forgiven by Allah as long as you sincerely repent. In addition, if what you have done negatively has impacted another person, you also have to take ownership for that. You have to learn how to say sorry to others, how to mend and make up for things that you may have done. So these are just some ways in which we can give them the tools to understand the spiritual changes of puberty, and to seek forgiveness. As Allah says that, "O my servants who have wronged themselves by sinning, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. No doubt Allah forgives all sins. Indeed, He is the all-forgiving, the most merciful." We never want them to walk out of a discussion feeling overwhelmed or feeling like they have done something that is unforgivable, or we want them to leave empowered. We want to give them the tools. We want to give them advice. We want to give them guidance, and we want them to walk away feeling like, if I've done something wrong, there's something that I can do about it. So this is just a brief overview of how to approach puberty. All of the detail, of course, is included in the book series, but this is just a way for to see what needs to be focused on. I hope, inshallah, that you found it beneficial to the parents, the educators, community leaders here. Jazakallah khair for everything that you do, and may Allah make it easy and possible for you to have these very sensitive discussions within the best manner, as you know your community's the best. Jazakallah khair. With the remaining time that we have, I leave it to you to ask any questions or comments. I will stay here as long as you would like. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakumullah khair, Dr. Barakallahu feekum. Thank you so much for this wonderful talk, and we have benefited a lot, inshallah. All our parents and educators have benefited, inshallah, as well. I do have, if I may ask the following question regarding initiating the conversation for the first time with a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old male or female. How would you approach it? If you could give us an example just to help us navigate this sensitive topic. Jazakumullah khair.
Sure, that's a great question. So, it really depends on if we're talking about a male or a female child. So oftentimes when it comes to a female child, it could be a lot earlier than that, and hopefully it should be. We can kind of start having these discussions slowly as they from when they're young, and then we just continue to build. So you can have like a toddler, for example, and toddlers, they already know that there's a distinction between males and females. They know that only women can get pregnant. They know that only women can breastfeed. They can recognize certain physical differences, and we just kind of feed off of that and learn from that, or have them learn from that. When children are young enough in the school age time, they recognize that not all the time that their moms are praying or fasting, and we want to seize those opportunities rather than lying and forgive us if we've ever fallen in that situation. But we can address things in more of a simple way, despite how young they are. Is that Mama can't pray or fast right now because, the area of the body that holds a baby, it goes through a cleaning every month. And when it goes through a cleaning, Allah says that that women, as a mercy, that women don't have to pray or fast. So they're kind of getting these little bits of information. And then we talk about when they are, around 10 years old, especially, for a girl, or we're talking about for a boy, is that we talk to them about, eventually at some point in the next few years, your body's going to start looking more like Baba or like Mama, right? Like Dad or like Mom. And so how do you think it changes that way? And kind of see what they think and kind of let them lead the discussion. Oftentimes, what parents will say is that a lot of the times the child comes to the parent and starts asking questions. And if you see that type of question can start to initiate a conversation, then that's kind of your way in. And so sometimes, they'll say, well, how come when Baba has a beard, when am I going to have a beard? And same for females as well. So these are good opportunities to kind of seize those to seize the conversation, seize the opportunity for the conversations in that type of way. In terms of initiating it, it's really just starting to ask a couple questions, see what they already know, and then kind of build off of it from there. It's very different for each child. It's case by case. Some kids have a lot more knowledge than others because they are, the last sibling, or they have older siblings or cousins. And for some kids, it may be something which they don't know much of at all because they're the oldest, or, they haven't really, maybe it's just their personality. They haven't given it much thought. That being said, you have to tailor the conversation to each child. In an educational setting, it's different. The book series is written for an educational, environment to have a discussion. But parents have the flexibility to kind of tailor the conversation for that child, which is why it's so important that both are involved.
Barakallah feekum. Jazakumullah kul khair, Doctor. We do have another question, if we may. Regarding teaching this curriculum, is it okay if the Islamic teacher takes the initiative, or do we need to have a specific teacher with specific knowledge and background? Jazakumullah kul khair.
So in terms of the knowledge base of this material, it doesn't have to necessarily be any particular knowledge base. Somebody who has read through the material and is able to have a good understanding of the developmental age of their students or of their child is an appropriate person to teach it. What is highly recommended is that the students are separated by gender and that there's a same gender teacher. In terms of the qualifications, again, it could be anyone. For some schools, it's the science teacher that ends up teaching it. But for a majority of the schools, it ends up being the Islamic studies teacher. As you notice, there's a lot of Islamic components. And so actually incorporating the health book series in the Islamic studies curriculum tends to be the easiest way to do so. That being said, if schools are able to create their own separate health class, even outside of Islamic studies, and then whatever you think would be best for your school on who should be guiding the class. But there are no necessary qualifications, just somebody who understands the material, is able to talk to kids at a developmental age, meaning they're not sharing over details or being overly graphic. There has to be that level of haya, especially when we're talking to young ones. And also somebody who's able to navigate the Islamic discussions. So oftentimes it does end up being the Islamic studies teacher. But again, you know your community the best, inshallah.
Barakallah fikum, Doctor. When it comes to the teacher book, Doctor, is this something that we must purchase as a school, or is it optional? Jazakumullah kul khair.
So actually, from my understanding, and Brother Sharaf or anyone from the Noor Art team would maybe able to better assist this question, but for schools who purchase the health book curriculum, the teacher's manual is automatically included. It is a printout copy. Actually, give me 1 second. I have it right here. So this is the teacher's manual. It's quite thick, and you know, it goes through different types of objectives, meaning lesson plans, and it goes through proposed lesson plans in terms of, you know, what the topic is, how long it will take, teacher activities, student activities. The actual book series includes a bunch of questions, and the teacher's manual will include all of the answers. I do highly recommend that you get the teacher's manual, and from my understanding, if you purchase the health curriculum, they will automatically send you the teacher's manual for free, inshallah. This is why you also don't see, and Brother Sharif, maybe you can address this. The teacher's manual, you don't see it on the website, but if you purchase the curriculum, they automatically send it to you. And Brother Sharif or anyone from the NORAT team, if you can confirm that, that would be helpful.
Jazakallah khair, Doctor. Yes, definitely, inshallah. As soon as the school approaches us, purchasing the series for the school, for the whole class, of course, we will be supplying them, inshallah. Because we do have two versions, the printed one, which you just showed us, and we do also have a PDF version that's, you know, easily accessible, you know, on a laptop, inshallah. Jazakumullah kul khair.
I hope that answers your question. Is there any other questions or comments?
Doctor, I do have a question here. It does say, could the teacher teach, or could the teacher reach you, or is it has to be the school? Of course, you could reach us at any time at info@noorart.com, inshallah. Or if you prefer to call us at our phone number, inshallah, our technical team will, yes, here, this is the email, inshallah, and our phone number. You can reach to us, whether it's for your household, whether you're a teacher, a parent, or a school, and we'll definitely, inshallah, help you out in this regard, bi'idhnillah. Doctor, the last question we have here is how would you recommend approaching this issue if the community is very conservative when it comes to such issues? We did have at one point of time where some parents came back to the school kind of saying that we opted out of such information from the public school. Why are you introducing it now in our Islamic school? If you would guide us in how to approach such comments and tips in order to deal with such concerns. Jazakumullah kul khair.
Yeah, sure. Jazakallah khair. Wonderful question, actually. So a lot of the times when you see certain parents, they left the public school because they did not want their child to participate in the health curriculum there. Completely understandable. There's actually research has found an uptick in Islamic school admissions because of the health curriculum that has been changed and reformatted in secular schools. And a lot of the main reason why is because they have mandated the LGBTQ inclusive programming within the health curriculum. Another example is the promotion of, not necessarily promotion of premarital relations, but a downplay of abstinence. And so a lot of parents, understandably, and this is also, what triggered the need for creating this curriculum, is needing a health curriculum within a moral framework. And so if parents are leaving that and coming to an Islamic school, and the Islamic school is saying, well, we have a health curriculum, it may definitely understandably put them on edge, because this may have been one of the main reasons why they wanted their child to go to an Islamic school. So it's extremely important that schools have an open communication with their parents prior to their students starting the health class. This is what I do before I teach the health class, is I send out an email to all of the parents, and I let them know that there is a health curriculum. I let them know all of the topics that are included. I give them an opportunity to come to the school and to look through the books. One can even hold a parents' night, and they can get an opportunity to look at the books, go through the curriculum. I do have, the Noor Art team has this as well, that on the Noor Art website, there are several recorded webinars. One webinar is Why Teach Health Education to Muslim Youth? And this was really for that reason. So you can share that recording with the parents and let them know, this is the author of the book series. This is the reason why she wrote the book. And then I was looking for this page here, but in the teacher's manual, there is a page in the teacher's manual that the school can print out, and it basically explains what the curriculum is, all of the topics that are included, and that there is a signature that the parent needs to sign to make sure that they approve of the curriculum. So it kind of puts a lot of the time the parents at ease, because you are being extremely open right from the start that what you're going to be talking about, what topics are going to be covered. You're giving them an opportunity to look at the book series. You can share the recorded webinar with them, share it from the Noor Art website, or share the Noor Art link that has that recorded webinar on there, and Why Teach Muslim Youth Health Education. It explains all of those, the reason why I wrote it, and that way they can, and it gives an overview of what's going to be discussed, and of course that they have to sign it. So that way they feel this sense of, okay, no one's doing anything without my permission. So we want to have that open communication. We don't want to do things without them knowing about it, because that can make things a lot more difficult down the line. That their child comes home and says, I learned about this, or I learned about that. You want to be extremely transparent right from the beginning. So I highly recommend you do that. The teacher's manual does include that permission slip as well. It's already pre-written, so you can just make a copy of it and send it out to all of the parents as well.
Barakallah feekum, Doctor. Jazakumullah kul khair. I think we're at the end, inshallah. We do have another question, and it's asking about this webinar and if it's going to be recorded. Of course, we will. This webinar is recorded, inshallah, and we will be sharing it bi'idhnillah on our website very shortly. Our technical team will share the link for the page, which has all the health and wellness webinars that we've previously had with Dr. Amber, and all the new webinars will be uploaded, inshallah, at that link. At the end, I would like to thank Dr. Amber again. Thank you so much for being with us today, and sharing with us this valuable knowledge. I would like to thank all the teachers that have been with us, all the parents and educators. Jazakumullah kul khair, and may Allah bless your efforts, inshallah, and be with you in these critical times, and helping our youth, especially in these very critical topics. We hope to see you, inshallah, in the upcoming webinars. Please keep an eye on your inbox. We will always have new valuable webinars, especially with Dr. Amber Khan. Lastly, Jazakumullah kul khair, everyone. Dr. Amber, thank you so much again, and we'll see you in the upcoming webinars. Jazakumullah kul khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.